Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora. I am a galactic walk-in. This means that I am not the original inhabitant of this physical human body. I am an abstract energy consciousness, a non-physical, non-corporeal aspect of energy that has come into this physical cellular body via a portal that I invented and created and named the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I had the experience of creating the Flying Rainbow Lasagna and coming into this realm on October 8th of 2001, and since then it has been my mission and part of my journey of consciousness to share the information that I have with other people. And primarily, the way in which I have shared this information is through visual artwork. That area of my neurology and perception and expression was untrammeled in the experience, although in the beginning it was very difficult for me to express myself verbally, and also I was totally numerically and mathematically illiterate and didn't have any math skills when I first came into this neurology. I always was very strong in the visual sense and was making these highly complex patterned line drawings very early on. And the drawings eventually became more complex, became a series of paintings, and the paintings contain information that is in the form of the vibratory language of color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone being associated with music. So this is the language that is the common ground that beings of various different levels of density or light moving at different speeds can use in order to communicate. The name of this radio program is Birth of a New Dimension. This is taken from some other paintings that I have done. Birth of a New Dimension is a large 4-foot panel where I depict the events that are going on our planet and in our cosmos right now. And these are events that have to do with the unfolding of consciousness, or we could think of it folding of consciousness, adding a new dimension. So the birth of a new dimension, the new dimension that I'm speaking about or referring to, is one that is created when we marry together the realm of pure energy or pure consciousness or pure spirit. It's been described in many different ways. It is the quantum realm, the realm of subatomic energy. It is a place of pure possibilities and probabilities. We marry or blend together seamlessly that realm with the realm of what we would describe from our physical senses as external reality, the realm of the seemingly hard-edged objects that we perceive with our 5 physical senses. These two realms have always been interconnected and intercommunicative. However, there have been things that inhibit the free exchange of energy and information across this barrier. Some of those inhibitors have been genetic aspects within the human genetic code. Some of it has been consciousness, the way that people perceive and belief system. Some of it has been based in context. Let's say the events within which your own individual timeline is submerged, because your individual timeline is only one mere thread woven within a time tapestry, a very complex arrangement of many, many interconnected threads that all have an impact on one another. Brief pause. So the concepts that I speak about, like this idea of the tapestry of time and time threads, I depict this in my visual art, and I love to speak about it here on the radio, and I love even more to have a paper and pencil or virtual digital whiteboard in my hand so that I can share the ideas through diagrams. I really speak a lot through pictures. So, I like to say one day a week I'm here on the radio painting a painting with my voice, Most of the time, I'm in my studio literally painting a painting with a paintbrush and using templates to make perfect diagrams of the non-physical energy centers of your body. So getting now to Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the formalized course that I have developed in order to present this information in a comprehensive and cohesive format. Because when I first started to speak about this information, I did it in a very artistic way, we could say, very non-linear conversations that bounce around between different subjects. And I started to understand that not everybody can comfortably ingest information in that way. Most people have been through the school system and have a formalized understanding of how to learn. And so it's very effective to break the information down into different subtopics and arrange those topics in a linear format. So that is what I began doing in 2012, and in 2013 I came out with the lessons called Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. The idea of naming it that is that up until this point, humanity has defined itself as merely being associated with the lower end of the spectrum. When I say lower, I do not mean lower in terms of value or being less good or effective in life. I simply mean lower like a lower note. That's a lower C than this note. So the lower end of the spectrum, red, orange, yellow. This red is the physical body. Orange are your mammalian emotions, the heavier, denser emotions, such as romantic attraction, anger, hatred, and affection. And the what I call the thin schmear of human cerebral cortex on top of all of that. The human operating system, your daily conscious waking intellect, which mitigates the tendencies of the two lower aspects of self. Just your body that just wants to stay alive on a cellular level, and your mammalian emotions that wish to procreate with appropriate partners and feed and be fed by and be groomed by appropriate partners. You know, we're thinking about primates here, mammals. And then, of course, the very thin atmosphere, the eggshell thin layer on top of that of human thought, which is when you say, no, I cannot simply hit that person over the head and drag them by their hair back to my cave and copulate with them. This is what we call society, all right? For many years, about 10 or 12,000 years, humans have been defined only by those three levels, not recognizing that there is a higher level of self. From green, which is the level of unconditional love and is located at the heart, up through the throat, which is light blue, and your brow, which is dark blue, and the crown or the top of your head, which is violet. These are what I define as the higher faculties. And for many thousands of years, this was considered to be the realm of only very special individuals, like monks who spent their whole lives meditating, or saints, or mystics, or visionaries. Very special people, and that the rest of the world was resigned to really blindness and dumbness or lack of perception and expression in the higher realms. And I am here to tell you, that is false, that that's not true. It's laughably false, that you were created to be a full spectrum human. You were created to encompass the areas of consciousness that comprise the octave from your physical, your emotional, your intellectual, your unconditional love, the pivot point that all of this rotates around, your communication and truth, your insight, connection to Christ consciousness, which is the galactic entity that we are a part of, and your connection to the source. This is where you plug into the cosmos. This is like where you receive energy and new information from the higher dimensions. And then that is the octave that you comprise in the what we are defining level of human. But that is not the end of the spectrum. Just like on the piano, there's the next note. That would be considered the next chakra on your body, and that is white light. Because all of these other colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, up to white light. That white light is the pure ray of consciousness that emanates from our star, the sun, but really emanates from the entire stellar network. So the stellar network is a network of abstract consciousness. That consciousness is emitted as physical light rays and also as timelines and also as little tiny focused areas of awareness known as individuals, such as you and I. And we, as little tiny focused areas of awareness known as individuals, travel along timelines having experiences. And this setup was always meant to be in real time, that we are having real-time experiences and broadcasting that experience of reality back to the source, back to the sun, back to the star that emanated us, in the same way that bats do echolocation. And this is bats send out a vibratory wave, it bounces off of their environment, it bounces back, and they sense the difference and are able to create a mental picture of the world based on those tiny, minute differences. This is what our star is doing. Our star is sending out consciousness, just abstract consciousness, physical light waves, and timelines. And some of that information bounces back from a slightly different direction that it was sent out. And this is how the larger, greater entity that is comprised of the stellar network gathers information and builds a picture of reality. So you and your life, you are like one tiny receptor on the retina of a very great being. All of this that I'm speaking about, these concepts, are spoken about at great length in my online class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And it is named that because the idea is that we are all destined to be full spectrum humans, not merely a physical body with mammalian emotions and some human thoughts on top of it, but also to have unconditional love and to express pure truth through communication. And that communication can be verbal or it can be nonverbal. It can be abstract. It can be through musical tones, light and color, dance movements, and animations, and almost any other form of expression. And you are expressing all of that with insight. Insight is pure wordless wisdom. It is like the part of you that understands information in a dream without having to have things explained to you. Or if you can think of a person but you cannot think of their name, the name is on the tip of your tongue, but you can think of who that person is. That level of thought, beyond words. We are talking about the supra-consciousness as opposed to the subconscious. This is the higher consciousness, but it is not the higher consciousness of a different entity or someone other than you. It is your own higher consciousness from which you have been artificially separated by the constant verbalization of the hacked human operating system at the level of the ego. And you are also this violet chakra, this guiding principle. The crown chakra is one's connection to the source, and it is literally the compass needle or the guiding principle that guides and informs all of the other chakras on your body. And this octave of chakras, even though technically there's 7 of them, an octave means 8, when we add all of them up together, we add up to that ray of unity consciousness, the pure undifferentiated light of consciousness. So I'm going to use this in order to speak about ascension and ascended mastery, but let me just continue briefly to invite you to sign up for the class. The semester begins in January of 2016. I've done a little bit of new restructuring in the way I am presenting the material this year, so you can read all about it by going to flyingrainbowlasagne.com, and that on the homepage you can very clearly see the link for Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And basically, it is a series of recorded lessons that include my artwork and drawings and annotations on top of the artwork while my voice is playing and you can hear me in the background. And recorded lectures from previous semesters combined with monthly live video conferences where I make presentations or lectures, and also you can see me, I can see you, and you can speak and ask questions. So it's an effective way for us to communicate as a class. And there is also exciting things happening on my website, setting up a forum where members can discuss aspects of the class after class, because people often said, Aurora, we love to talk about this while the video conference is going. How can we keep the conversation going? So that is now going to be a reality. So in order to participate in all of this, to find out the details of it, please visit flyingrainbowlasagne.com. So now back to this idea of you as a ray of refracted consciousness. Refraction in terms of light and science, the definition that science brings is when we take light waves and we break them up or split them up into their constituent elements. Like if we were to take a birthday cake and split it up into its elements, we've got, flour and sugar and butter and eggs and salt, and then a little tiny bit of, like vanilla flavoring, it's just the tiny little bit, and a tiny little bit of cherry on top. And it's all about these. I'm using cake as an example because it is a color recipe, and we understand that in baking it's very important to put things in the right proportion. It's appropriate to put in 2 cups of flour. It's not appropriate to put in 2 cups of salt. If you did that, the cake would be considered now to be toxic or no longer edible for humans. So in your body, you have energy centers that are filled with light. Let's also define light. In this case here, we are speaking about light as pure consciousness, not merely physical light. And this is a very good discussion. Someone brought it up in earlier semesters of the class, because when I give the measurements of the proportions of your chakras, I am not relating it to the physical nanometers, the measurements of physical light waves. It would be wonderful if it was a one-to-one direct correspondence where like a light wave of 12 nanometers then had an orange light wave of 6 nanometers within it. That would be so wonderful. However, it is not set up in that way. So it must be understood that the light that I am describing as part of your, what is also known as your light body, this is non-physical light. Because when I look at a person, I wear rainbow clothing. You can see a rainbow surrounding me all the time. But most of us, when we look at each other, we do not see a rainbow of literal light surrounding one another. If you do see light surrounding a person, it is most likely that you are perceiving with your inner vision. Your inner vision comes from your inner eye or your third eye. Your third eye is associated with your indigo chakra, your brow chakra. It is where the bindi symbol is placed, as in the India of the Far East, so you can get an idea of where on the forehead it is. And this is the eye of insight, the eye of wisdom. It is the center of your imagination, and it is associated with and emanates from or is intertwined with your pineal gland, but again is not interchangeable. Pineal gland is a physical structure, and your third eye is a non-physical apparatus. It's an aperture that can receive energy and can also reach out for energy. So whenever you put your attention on something, you are literally attenuating to it. Attenuating from Greek, attenuos, to reach out towards. And when you do that, your third eye is like a limb, like an arm or a leg or an elephant's trunk. And it reminds me a lot in the way that it works and moves like an elephant's trunk. It is your attention. It can grasp forward. It can reach forward and sense information. And it is designed to sense what is coming in the future. You're on a timeline, and that timeline is just one possibility out of a sea of possibilities. So up until this point, I speak about human history and humans being defined only as red, orange, and yellow, and that very limited sense of humanity. That is because about 10 or 12,000 years ago, humans went through what I jokingly refer to as the squashing, but what is more seriously referred to in mythology as the fall. So this is the fall of consciousness that was concomitant with the changes and degradation of the human genetic structure. So the genes of humanity, as they are right now, are not in their original intended format. This is why I also call the human operating system a hacked operating system. Because in this time and place, the definition of something which is hacked is a system that is changed or diverted from its original intention, from its originally intended use. So the human genetic structure and human biology has all been hacked. And this is the explanation for the loss in levels of consciousness that has happened, as I said, about the past 12,000 years and spanning the entire time that humans define as human history. So there's a very large portion of the past that most humans do not presently have access to, that would show what life was like when the systems weren't hacked, but because of the hacked systems, people do not presently have access to that information. So all of this matters because you were originally designed to have access to your higher faculties, those faculties at the level of green, blue, indigo, and violet. So this is your heart. Your heart is a clearinghouse for all of the information that comes from higher dimensional realms to denser realms, and from denser realms back to less dense realms. This is that feedback loop with the stellar network that I was describing in terms of what is similar to echolocation with sonar, the use of sonar. So I've also described your heart makes a tone, and that tone is literally a tone of equal sharing, meaning that there is no loss of information. So you could think of your heart and unconditional love as a clearinghouse for all information and all energy. And when your heart is open and when it is functioning correctly, all of the energy that comes into it also flows out of it. This is energetic metabolism at its very basic level. It means there's no friction, there's no loss, there's no entropy. Because, again, this has to do with the stellar network. Information and time energy that is emanated from the star, that when you experience that time energy in an unperturbed sense, without friction, without loss, without taking away any of the energy, and you send it back to the star, that is called love. And that is the tone that your heart is making. So again, we are making a distinction here between unconditional love, which is a tone that your consciousness makes when you are performing certain maneuvers while you're submerged in time, as opposed to romantic attraction, which is at the level of orange, which is the level of your mammalian emotions. Romantic attraction is all about who you want to hug and kiss and marry and have babies with. Unconditional love is literally an energetic tone that you create with consciousness. And you have a partner in creating this tone. In that sense, it is similar to romantic love and attraction. However, that partner is not a sexual partner. This is not about procreation. This is about sharing consciousness. So the stellar network, the sun, can be your partner in sharing consciousness. This is not sexual partnership. This is about unconditional love. You were designed as a physical container for that consciousness to be here at this level of density, experiencing it, having all sorts of life adventures, and then broadcasting that experience back to the stars so that they can feel what it is like, and also so that they can change and amend and restructure the time possibilities that are being emanated in order to give you eternal life. I was going to say a better life, but why go for better when we can go for best? Because you were truly created by a infinitely loving and benevolent presence in order to have loving experiences. So this means you were not created in order to have a experience of your cells degrading, becoming decrepit, and eventually dying. Oh no, that's not what you were created for at all. You were created to live happily, joyously, not merely comfortably, but without disease, with ease, in the physical body structure, and to be, at the same time that you're in the body, connected to the stellar network, what would be defined as higher consciousness, or the levels of consciousness that reside at the levels of green and above, the communication, insight, and connection to that which is higher. So that whole area of the spectrum is what humans are just now beginning to claim as their own and claim on a widespread scale. And this is a revolutionary act for this to happen, because you were always meant to have that experience. It is an empowering experience to reclaim these higher faculties, because you are not designed to feel your way through life, hitting the membrane of death and circulating back and having to do this over and over again. So if we were in my studio together live, or if you were taking lessons for full spectrum humans, I would grab my pencil and paper or my stylus and tablet and I'd begin drawing. Since we're on the radio, I'm going to ask you to refer to the Twitter feed. You can check this out on the UCY homepage at Birth Dimension is the handle for it. And I have aspects of my artwork shown there, and I have some drawings and diagrams there. And one of the diagrams that I have looks like a circus tent or a vortex with the point at the very top in cross-section. And this is a drawing that I draw all the time. I call it the time vortex, and it is one of the primary shapes of the cosmos, this vortex shape. When we add together 4 vortexes, we have the shape of one chakra on your body. If you add together 2 vortices, what you have is the center of a torus, kind of a donut hole. And people are just starting to understand the profundity and significance of the torus shape and how that relates to the flow of energy. And the flow of energy, like Earth's magnetosphere is a torus, and the sun's heliosphere is a torus. These are the magnetic fields, but also fields of consciousness that surround and interpenetrate these, astronomical bodies. So your body also has an energy field around it, and it is just like your planet, Earth, has a magnetosphere shaped like a torus. We all have energy fields that are shaped like tori, and each one of our cells also has a toroidal shaped energy field. However, I paused before I said we all have energy fields shaped like a torus, because I have an energy field that is shaped like a flying rainbow lasagna. Now we are getting into it. I took the basic raw materials or the ingredients for this cake and placed it within a higher dimensional context. That is the action that I took as a walk-in coming into this body. And what does it mean to place something in a higher dimensional context? Well, if you were going from, let's say, the second dimension into the third dimension, it would be like taking a flat piece of paper and folding it into an origami shape. And all of a sudden you can go from merely having a picture of a frog on a flat surface to having a folded piece of paper that's actually in the shape of a frog. So what I have done when I added another dimension to the shape of the torus, I At the center of the torus, there is the singularity, and it is single by its definition. Singularity is what science perceives and defines as being at the center of black holes. Now, there are many, many black holes in the cosmos. However, there is only one singularity, and this is a distinction that must be understood. It's like saying there's only one infinity. Infinity is like a house where everybody lives. You don't have to put an address on the house because everyone is there. Everything is there. Every thought is there. All information, all energy, all possibilities, and all probabilities are at the singularity. However, there are many different doorways that all lead to the singularity. It's like imagine a house that is covered on every surface with doors, portals, windows, tunnels, every single different type of thing. Each one of those doors is what's at the center of a black hole. It's what's at the center of a star. It's what's at the center of you and each one of your chakras. It's what's at the center of each one of your cells in the nucleus. It's what is at the center of each one of the atoms that comprise your body. And it goes even smaller than that because there's singularities at the center of subatomic particles too. So there are literally an uncountable number of singularities or doorways that lead to that one infinity. At the center of the torus, there is a singularity, all right? And the flying rainbow lasagna shape, when we place that torus in a higher dimensional state, the singularity is at the violet point. I should have said that earlier. Yes, at the violet point, right up there at the crown. That is the point on your energetic anatomy where the fabric of space, time, and consciousness has been stretched to the point of infinity. Infinite amount of stretching. So Einstein describes, the fabric of space and time. He doesn't bring into account consciousness. He describes putting an infinitely heavy bowling ball on an infinitely stretchy fabric, rather. And imagining that fabric stretching down, 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 down until it comes to a point, and that point just keeps on going infinitely. That's the singularity. It is energy that is flowing inward endlessly. And we have that in the center of the torus. And it is the violet chakra, okay? The connection to the source. All of that energy flowing back to the source. And of course, when you connect, the source energy also flows from the source back to you. And that is the tone of unconditional love. The flying rainbow lasagna shape is created by moving that singularity up and down very fast. We move it up and down so fast that it looks like it's in two places at the same time. So when you're looking at the flying rainbow lasagna shape, and P.S., you can see an example of the flying rainbow lasagna by A, going to my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com. B, looking at the banner for the Flying Rainbow Lasagna Birth of a New Dimension homepage on UCY TV. Or C, going to @BirthDimension, the Twitter feed, and looking at some of my artwork and sculptures there. And you will see that the Flying Rainbow Lasagna has two pointy ends that have little violet aspects painted on them. And that violet aspect is the singularity. And what you're looking at is a still photo or composite that is made of energy moving through time. Just like if you took a picture of a person throwing a baseball, and it would look like they had, over a long exposure, 1,000,000 arms, and like one arm is moving all the way behind their head and one arm is moving all the way in front of their face, and there's 1,000,000 arms in between them. But you understand this is an exposure over time. So the flying rainbow lasagna is the shape that happens when we look at this development of energy as it's flowing over time. It is a oscillation, a jumping back and forth of the singularity between two places. So I like to joke that the flying rainbow lasagna is a seemingly impossible shape. I do not break the rules of the cosmos in order to make this shape. I bend the rules. I redefine what the singularity can be. Because up until this point, the singularity has been defined by its singleness. And how can you have a shape that has two singularities in it? This would be called a duality, not a singularity. And right now we're living submerged within this realm of duality. And literally, I came into this realm as a galactic walk-in to give people here the solution to duality. This is like the antidote to the experience up to this point. And the flying rainbow lasagna is a shape that resolves duality. It's a tool for dissolving boundaries. If we think of a boundary as a thing that creates duality, we have on one side of the boundary light and on the other side dark, or on one side white and the other side black, or on one side hot and the other side cold. And let's use hot and cold as an example. If we had a membrane that separated two liquids that were hot and cold, then those two things would be in duality. If we have a porous membrane or something that can dissolve that boundary, and molecules that are cold can migrate to the hot side and the hot side can migrate to the cold side, what we end up having is an equalization of the energy throughout the system. Or the distinctions between these two levels of energy become less, I want to say, limiting. We're no longer limited by those distinctions. Because, cold molecules are moving slower, fast molecules are moving faster. So let's say if you need energy, you can hop over to the fast side where molecules are moving faster. And then if you have too much energy, you can hop through that porous membrane over to the cold side to where energy is moving slower. So now let's relate it to something that maybe you couldn't ever imagine hopping over a membrane and experiencing: time. Up until this point, humanity has been stuck in time, unable to go into the past and unable to go into the future, but certainly with our minds able to cling to the past or with anxiety reach forward into the future. And the flying rainbow lasagna is the boundary dissolving tool of consciousness that we can use to now combine deep antiquity and all of the possibilities and probabilities of the future. What does this mean for your personal experience? So I said, please envision this time vortex. The time vortex is a little diagram that I draw, and at the pointy end, that is ascension. This is all about the recipe of you and becoming an ascended master. So we have this pointy end at the top and the larger base or foundation at the bottom of this diagram. And that foundation is like starting from zero. It is birth. It is the moment of birth. And all of the timelines that are created emanate from that level. And they all move forward like a line. If I had a pencil in my hand and drawn on a piece of paper, I'd draw a vertical line moving upward. And when that vertical line reaches what would be the edge of the circus tent or the membrane that is the edge of the vortex, that is the flowing membrane of death. So death is not a person. Death is not a skeleton wearing a black cloak that cuts you down with a giant knife or something like that. This is the anthropomorphic interpretation of death. The abstract interpretation of death is that it is a flowing membrane of energy, like a curtain of energy or a waterfall beyond which your time cannot flow. So you're on a timeline, just like a ship on a river, flowing in one direction, and at a certain point, that river reaches the membrane of death. Every single one of the timelines that are possible in your life reaches the membrane of death, except for one. There's only one timeline out of all of the uncountable iterations and possibilities that make up you that actually leads to eternal or extended consciousness. I call this the path of least likelihood, because in terms of probability, there is the tiniest sliver of probability that you can actually get onto that timeline. However, it is inevitable, because these timelines, I also liken it to the song of your life, like an old-fashioned analog record, where you start out in the groove that is at the periphery of the record, and the needle of your awareness plays the song of your life, the events of your life. And every time you reach the membrane of death, you die. Death is not something that happens once at the end of your life. Death happens constantly throughout the experience of your life. So now we're taking it away from the anthropomorphic man who cuts you down and steals your life away from you. And now we are abstractifying it. Death is a force. And now we are understanding that death is a force for the focusing of awareness. Just like your eyes, your eyeballs literally focus light. The lens of your eye takes light that's going in every single different direction and corrals it and organizes it and focuses it into something that can be projected on your retina and make a vision of reality. And death, this flowing membrane, is a focuser of your awareness and your consciousness. And it is literally telling you, don't focus in this direction. It's kind of a heavy, negative, but valuable didactic process, a way of saying, don't do this. So I've used on this broadcast different, life experiences as examples before, like the life experience of, should you go out and buy milk at the store? Will you return home safely with your milk and have a cup of coffee? Or will you get smashed by a tractor trailer and, die instantaneously? You're just a smear on the highway. And the difference between those two realities are your trajectory through time. The differences are made of your choices, your belief systems, and literally the direction that your consciousness or your awareness is traveling through time. So this is the trajectory of your consciousness. True survival, like your red chakra, that primary survival instinct of the physical body. People think, survival instinct, that has to do with being bigger and stronger and meaner and tougher than anyone else that's out there. Oh, no. Ha ha ha. Surviving actually has to do with choosing the right timelines. Because you could be the biggest, toughest, meanest, snaggle-toothed beast with the biggest muscles and be the strongest. But if you are not able to perceive clearly, you could be walking along a path that, just drops over a cliff and you die because of lack of awareness. Or a boulder, how about this? You're walking along on a path and a boulder drops on your head and you die. How, muscles and snaggletooth claws and fangs do not protect one from mishaps and accidents. And also, like the principles of Aikido or some of the masters of the Far East, the best way to defend yourself, or real warriors, is to avoid battle. Instead of having to face your enemy in combat, to perceive that your enemy is coming to harm you and avoid the interaction. That is what real warriors do. So having big muscles is not necessarily the best way to survive. Having big muscles is how you survive if you are looking at the world purely through the lens of the red chakra, the physical chakra. However, we now understand that the best way to survive and to thrive is to be coming at the world from the direction of the violet chakra. This is your guiding principle. This is like your compass needle that tells you in which direction the path of least likelihood exists, because it is a direction of events, of opportunities, of thoughts and beliefs and possibilities. So this being on the timeline, that is the path of least likelihood, might involve you being in the right place at the right time to meet the right person, to have the right experience, to learn the right things, to paint the right paintings, to sing the right songs, to eat the right foods and move forward. It has nothing to do with whether you are strong enough to lift 100 pounds over your head. That type of survival is an old paradigm way of looking at things. And we are now speaking about what your body was truly designed for. So I said earlier that your life is like an analog record where you are circulating with the needle of your awareness from the periphery to the center spindle. When the center spindle, that life, that is your true character. And this entire cosmos is a refinery of characteristics. These characteristics are at the level of ego. So again, people say, they talk about kill your ego, get rid of your ego is bad and wrong and stinky and poopy. No. Your ego, there's nothing wrong with having an ego. Your ego, this is the level of yellow. Here we go. There's nothing wrong with that level. It is a hacked operating system, but your computer should have an operating system. Just get the viruses out of there and it'll function fine. You know, your operating system is laggy and people are constantly breaking into your private files, which these are the intrusive thoughts, and people forget things and cannot think clearly. It's because you have a hacked operating system. It's not because you're supposed to get rid of your ego. It's because your ego is not well manufactured. It's not acting in the way it's supposed to be. So the ego is a sense of self. It is a necessary interface between the non-verbal, abstract aspects of ourself and the physical, verbal, expressed aspects of ourself in this level of density. It is good to have that interface. The difficulty is that for most people up until this point, the ego has grown as a distorted being because it hasn't been fed with real love, with real energy. It's got all of these deficits. Like if you don't give a kid vitamin D when they're growing up and they get rickets and their bones do not grow in the right format, that is what most people's egos are. Most people's egos are like these stunted, twisted little kids with rickets and their legs are not properly formed. Your egos are not properly formed because you were literally not loved and accepted. And this is lack of acceptance not only from parents and family members, but also from doctors, from society, from schools, from every level. This is about when young people don't fit in, when they don't fit in medically, when they don't fit in terms of their behavior or belief system, when they don't fit in terms of their way of learning, or they don't fit into the educational system, when they don't fit into the religious system. This is what I'm talking about. So you're not supposed to completely get rid of your character. People think that that's what ascended masters are, that they are these completely flavorless, not even vanilla, because vanilla is a lovely flavor, but just imagine totally bland, flavorless beings that have no individuation, no sense of, spark or creativity. I laugh. That's not what ascended masters are at all. Ascended masters are people who have made it to their path of least likelihood. One method of making it to the path of least likelihood is simply to explore every single possible iteration around that central path. And this is what humans have had to do for the past 10 or 12,000 years. It's why it's such a long, slow, tedious process to get to be an ascended master. You have to go through every single possible thing that could happen and find out, that's not it, that's not it, that's not the door, that's not the door. This is what happens when we don't have vision. When you don't have vision, you have to keep hitting the wall with your nose and then circulating back to the beginning and go through your whole timeline until you hit the membrane again with your nose. If you have vision or inner perception, you can attenuate. You can sense with your attention if you are on the correct timeline. And the correct timeline is one that does not end, let's say, immediately or in the near future with you on the membrane of death. If you're on a timeline right now with the trajectory of your consciousness where you're going to live another 15 years, that's pretty good. It means you have 15 years to figure things out or to refine your thoughts, refine your belief system, change what you need to do. Sometimes people need to have a career change. Sometimes they need to have a change in diet. Sometimes they need to change their social structure, who they live with, or what they believe in. So all of this is, I'm speaking about how we were supposed to live. We come from an antediluvian, sophisticated, worldwide culture known as Atlantis, but named many things in many, different cultures. And this is how people lived before the genetic code was changed and diminished. You were meant to be able to be born and to ascend. Everybody ascended in this antediluvian worldwide culture. There was no death. Death, I say many times, death is the aberration, the thing that is not supposed to exist. So death, this membrane, it is meant to guide us away from those possibilities, to guide your mind away from those possibilities, and your awareness and your actual experience away from those possibilities. The truth is, you don't have to experience every single possible negative iteration of your life and find out, oh, that didn't work, trial and error, try again. You have the capacity, once your higher faculties are activated, to be make much more of a choice in the direction of your consciousness, the trajectory that you're going, and in being guided towards that path of least likelihood. I also said before that this violet chakra at the top of your head, it is your guiding principle, and it is a compass. That compass directs you to connect with the source and tells you where to go and what to do and what to think and how to behave and what to experience. And if you keep on tuning in to that higher guiding principle, and when I say higher, I just mean it is a higher frequency note than, say, that note. This is the higher note that you want to be listening to because it is closer to the empirical, abstract energy that is not distorted, that comes directly from the source. If you listen to that note, then it will guide you on the path of eternal consciousness. So let's also speak about, so we're talking about ascension here. Ascension, when you reach this path of least likelihood, you are able to exit at the wormhole, at the very, very tiny point of that time vortex where time, space, and consciousness has been stretched infinitely. There is a wormhole. It's the singularity. It is infinity. It is how you get out of this layer of reality. The quantum leap in the subatomic particles, the definition of the quantum leap. This is what happens when an electron gathers enough energy and jumps from one shell of possibilities to the next shell of possibilities. And there's no jump and a half, jump and 3/4, I finally made it. It is a jump that must be done in one increment, the quantum leap. You can't break it up into smaller packets. This is the leap of your consciousness out of this level of density into the level of density that we would consider to be one of ascended mastery. Every single one of us in the flesh, right here, right now on this planet, has within our life code the potential to be an ascended master. It's in there. It is graphically in the diagram of your life. It is that central path of least likelihood. The question is, in experience, how many iterations is it necessary for you as an individual to go through until your consciousness is refined enough to stay in alignment with that path? So when I said that your consciousness is like a recipe of cake, in some cake is having 2 cups of salt is poisonous cake. That recipe of self is like saying the characteristics of that person are not the characteristics of an eternal person. The characteristics of a person that hits the membrane of death are the characteristics of a person whose consciousness cannot continue endlessly. And the journey of consciousness, it is an endless journey. It doesn't mean that you're in the same body. It means that you remember. You have continuity of consciousness. Masters of the Far East, these are like the meditators of Tibetan Buddhism, they are able to have continuity of consciousness between lifetimes. There are also some people who are not associated with the meditation practices of the Far East, whom have simply cultivated their consciousness to the point of being able to remember who they were through the membrane of death. And this is another aspect of Flying Rainbow Lasagne as a tool for boundary dissolution, that there is a membrane between lives. I was that person, now I am this person. However, if we understand my same consciousness, like my same hand was in a different glove, then I took off that glove and I put on a new glove. That glove was my old life. This glove is my new life. I identify with the hand within the glove. This is the very basic description of the trajectory of consciousness. So it is identifying with the eternal aspects of self and understanding that the temporal, non-eternal aspects of self do not travel with us, or those are only relative to the time and place within which we are submerged. Becoming an ascended master means that you and your consciousness and your characteristics have been refined to the point where it is time for us to press save, quote unquote, on the file that is you. So just like in modern digital word processing, you can save different versions of a document. First, you write your term paper, just write it. Even if it sounds like crap, just write it. And then you save it. And then you go back in, you edit it. Oh, take out this paragraph. That's not good, but say it this way instead. And then save that version. And then you do it again, you save it again. And you edit it again, you save it again. Well, this rewriting is the refinement process of your consciousness. That your consciousness is on a journey where you're first just trying to learn how to have a body. This is being a baby, just trying to get born. And then once you successfully navigate birth, you then have to navigate pathogenic diseases and learning how to control your body and learning how not to poop your pants and how not to fall downstairs and how not to get hit by cars. The first couple of years, there is a very steep learning curve until you learn to control your body. And then there are all the challenges of learning to navigate the social and economic paradigm of this time. Who is safe? Who is not safe? Who can you trust in this realm? Who can you not trust? Because there are some people that make a choice to get in somebody's car that they don't know, and then they don't make it home that day because they hit the membrane of death, because they made a choice that led to that direction. So, and again, this is not based in moralistic value judgments. This is based in the shape of what you are. It's like saying, is a square made of 90-degree angles? If it's made of 90-degree angles, then this will be a house that stands up. And if it's not made of the right angles, it's not going to stand up. You aligning with the path of least likelihood and refining the characteristics of your consciousness is all about achieving the right shape so that you can continue your trajectory through time. Thank you for tuning in. Please continue to prepare for the birth of a new dimension.